The movie begins with our main character, Pedro, looking out the window because he hears gunfire outside. His brother, Jimmy, tells him it's coming from the forest. He thinks it could be a poacher, but Pedro says poachers don't shoot that much. He believes 3 people are out there. The brothers leave the house and Pedro is equipped with a rifle. He tells Jimmy they will leave at dawn. During the day, they walk toward the forest with 2 dogs. They have to cross a fence before entering the woods. There, they locate the lower half of a man's corpse. Pedro reasons the man was cut by something sharp. An opened suitcase lies beside him in which resides an instrument of an unknown function. Jimmy says he has seen it somewhere. However, he doesn't know what it is for. He wonders if the man who brutally lost his life was brought to such a state by a man named Ruiz. Pedro remarks that Ruiz would not cut someone in half. He looks at a notebook the lifeless man had on him, and it tells Pedro where the man was likely heading. Later, the brothers approach a shack. The owner, Maria, steps out to hear them say they stopped by to learn about last night's gunshots. Pedro informs her he found paperwork of someone she may know. He adds, if she was waiting for him, the man won't get to her. Maria says he was supposed to deal with her son, Uriel. Surprisingly, the man was supposed to take Uriel's life. Hearing this makes the brothers look at each other. Once Pedro enters the shack, he sees the disturbing sight of a morbidly obese man lying in bed, covered with a grotesque disease. Maria starts to talk about having tried to pray for her son, but Pedro yells that churches are deceased. Maria thought they could heal Uriel. Her other son says they reported this to the police over 1 year ago. Pedro is amazed to hear it has been that long. He wants to know who the boy told. The next scene has the brothers at the local police station. An officer tells them Maria did not speak to him. The superintendent asks the brothers if they saw Uriel, and they say they did. He asks if they have ever seen a type of person he calls a rotten. Jimmy shakes his head. This prompts the other officer to ask how they know if Uriel is a rotten. Pedro wisely answers that when one sees a rotten, one knows. Many cases of possessed people are fake, says the superintendent. Pedro yells that Uriel is losing his life. He demands to speak to the mayor. After more arguing, Pedro throws himself at the man in charge. Jimmy is forced to take his brother off, and Pedro reveals they found the cleaner lifeless. The superintendent replies they will call public health to solve this problem. That is their protocol. The other officer wonders why there would be a possessed person in this region. Elsewhere, the aforementioned Ruiz tells the brothers that an unspecified they, possibly public health, will not come to see the corpse. They won't even see the rotten because they said it's not their problem. Jimmy tells Ruiz someone took the life of the cleaner they found. Someone was trying to prevent him from reaching Maria's house. Furthermore, they were told not to speak about this, or they will be marked, and this place will be worthless. They were suggested to leave until a new cleaner arrived. Pedro says Uriel is about to perish, so they can't wait for a cleaner. Ruiz agrees they should not talk about this. 4 of his dogs left 1 month ago. He says first the animals go crazy, then the deceased follow. He stresses this was organized by the state and believes they want his land. Ruiz never imagined a possessed person in this place. At night, he barges into Maria's house with a shotgun. Looking at Uriel, he says they brought the foulest thing to his land. Since he points his weapon at Uriel, Maria pleads for the intruder not to shoot. She says it will be worse if he does. Her other son says if Ruiz takes Uriel's life, Ruiz will perish too. Maria adds an unspecified it will take their souls. She declares it has to be done by a professional. Angered, Ruiz points his shotgun at her. He says he should have burned her house when she came with her filth. Uriel tells Ruiz to take his life. He also says Ruiz will be the first person he will visit once he is released. Thus, Ruiz does not shoot him and returns to his truck. In the morning, he is still in the vehicle. The brothers are there to hear him say they have to take Uriel away a great distance. He thinks the rotten must be removed before he rots the rest. Ruiz re-enters the shack, saying they have to tie Uriel and drag him like a pig. All 3 guys attempt to lift him by the sheets, yet he is too heavy even for the 3 of them. They resort to nearly dragging him out of the house. Uriel's weight proves too much as he rips through the sheets beneath him. After they acquire a blanket, they manage to lift the heavy man onto the back of Ruiz's truck. With that done, the trio starts to ride somewhere with Uriel. Eventually, they have ridden 300 kilometers away, and Pedro says they should travel maybe 100 more. Ruiz thinks they have to burn their clothes due to having touched Uriel. Looking at Pedro, he says the former did the right thing, but Ruiz does the wrong thing by keeping his eyes off the road. It causes him to nearly crash into a pedestrian. He is forced to swerve abruptly a few times. Later, they stop somewhere and wonder if they should drop Uriel there. The problem is that Uriel is not in Ruiz's truck anymore. Pedro reasons he fell out during the swerving. Jimmy says it happened about 20 minutes away. To Ruiz, this is far enough. He says it's no longer their problem. So they get back in the truck to ride home. At their house, Jimmy uncovers something hidden in a napkin that looks like a bullet. He covers it back. Pedro feels uneasy in his room and props open his window. Time seems to keep passing. Jimmy sits, looking at part of the cleaner's device they found in the forest. At Ruiz's place, his wife calls out to him from outside, bringing him to her. She tells him something is wrong with one of the goats. He fires his shotgun into the sky for the animals to scatter, yet one goat remains unafraid. It is the problematic one he points the shotgun at. His wife cries for him not to shoot it, or he will condemn them both. She reminds him they will be parents. The goat walks toward him until its head touches the shotgun. Alas, Ruiz shoots the... This makes his wife suddenly hack his face with an axe. She follows this by doing something even more disturbing. At their home, the brothers hear something and come to the entrance with a shotgun. Maria's younger son is there to say he went to Ruiz's place, where he found the man deceased. His wife was in a similar state. Furthermore, he says his mom vanished. He tells the brothers they did the wrong thing by taking Uriel away. This situation prompts the boy to ask if he can stay at their house. He is too scared to go back alone. Jimmy tells him he can't stay. Pedro tries to be more accommodating by telling the boy he can stay in the saddle room. However, Pedro wants him to leave at dawn. Jimmy knows the boy is armed, therefore the latter hands over his revolver. Before he goes, he advises the brothers not to use electric lights. Jimmy asks Pedro if he believes the boy, for Jimmy has a hard time believing his mother would abandon him. Inside, Pedro says they won't take anything from their house. Then they ride. Pedro says they will go to town, and he will collect his kids. He plans to leave this place with them. Once they arrive at a house, Pedro alone knocks on its door. A man named Leo opens it to hear Pedro tell him they need to speak. Leo says Pedro cannot enter, but the man barges in. He orders Leo to awaken a woman named Sabrina, as well as his kids. He also instructs Leo to bring 2 changes of clothes. Leo says he does not want his family involved. Pedro just yells for him to bring the clothes. Soon, Sabrina comes to them with her daughter. While Pedro is already undressed, she tells him to leave instantly and yells why he is in her house. He replies, "There will be a disaster." In the next scene, he is wearing new clothes outside, where he burns his old ones. Sabrina tells him he can't re-enter her home because he is violating a restraining order, yet his son is of a different mindset. The boy sees his father and runs to hug him. Back inside, Pedro firmly says they will all leave. He says there is a rotten in town that is free. The town will turn into hell quickly. Not listening to him, Sabrina tells Leo to call the police on her previous husband. She yells that her kids are not going anywhere. This makes Pedro yell he was with the rotten. She accuses him of lying, adding he vanished for 4 years and didn't even send a single dollar to them. As they argue, the family dog suddenly starts to attack Sabrina's daughter, Vicky. Their son witnesses this horror but doesn't do anything about it. Only when it gets considerably violent does he yell out with concern to his parents. Leo and Pedro chase the animal. Then Pedro changes his mind, returning to the house, where we see Sabrina losing her mind over Vicky. He goes upstairs to his oldest son, Yair. The boy seems to have a crippling condition. Pedro tells him not to bite himself and takes some time to calm his son before he carries him downstairs. Seeing Leo with a shotgun, he advises him not to use guns. He tries to knock some sense into the anguished man by saying he will find a demon instead of his dog. Alas, Leo gets into his truck to drive away. In a short time, Pedro finds Leo pointing his shotgun at the... He does not stay to witness him shoot it. He goes back to the house and sees Sabrina hugging Vicky. Strangely, the girl looks completely unharmed. She whispers to her mom that her father will take Sabrina's life. It will happen with a vehicle slamming into her, Vicky describes. Switching to Pedro, he sits in a car with his sons. As he drives out, he sees Leo drive his truck into Sabrina and Vicky. This causes Pedro to quickly drive away. Although it is terrible what happened, Vicky is not his daughter. Leo sits injured in his truck, looking at something incredible. Vicky is somehow still alive. Moreover, she is jumping around joyously. Pedro drives back to Jimmy, who asks him what happened. Traumatized, Pedro simply says he doesn't know. Their mother is also there. While they all ride, the mother says this kind of thing only happens in cities, but Pedro tells her it's happening here. Pedro's son, Santino, asks his grandmother what is a possessed one, so she starts to explain, saying an unspecified "it" goes into a person and uses their body to be born. There is a famous song about it that she starts to sing. It involves unsettling lyrics like, "They take the most valuable thing in a person's life," and "a person's body is no longer their own." However, it's not too bad if one takes precautions, she says. One can obey 7 rules. The first rule is that electric lights must not be used. One must not stay close to animals, not take anything close to the possessed, or hurt them. Rules 5 and 6 are that the evil must never be called by its name, in addition to not shooting the possessed with firearms. At this point, Pedro tells his mom to stop, but Santino says one more rule is left. It's a rule he doesn't get to hear. Then the mother gets a ring on her phone. She says it's from Sabrina. Pedro takes her phone prior to stepping outside to answer it. Sabrina says she wants her kids back. She adds Jair can't be far from home. He has to take his medicine. Thus, she urges Pedro to bring him back. Once he says Jair is fine with him, Sabrina tells him to realize his sons don't love him. They don't ever want to go to his house. That is why she cheated on him with many people. She calls him a little man who gave her a broken kid. She also says he wanted to get rid of Jair, All Pedro can say in return is he saw her lose her life before he breaks the phone in anger. Jimmy comes to him, and Pedro finally tells his brother that Sabrina is deceased. The person on the phone wasn't her. He cries about having seen her perish. Furthermore, he says he can't handle his life and calls himself a coward. The man believes he took the evil to her, almost destroying his family. Jimmy tries to calm him in his time of crisis. He says he knows someone who might help. Following this, the family arrives at a woman's house. She is Mirtha, living in a secluded area. She tells them they can stay at her place as long as they want to. Inside the house, Mirtha tells Jimmy that Jair looks rotten. The boy is autistic, Jimmy informs her. He asks her if she saw a possessed one. He says she told him she did in the past. Mirtha asks him what he came there for, because he thinks they saw a possessed. He answers. The woman says if he saw a possessed one, he would not answer with uncertainty. He would be sure of what he saw. She describes possession with a sinister tone, shadows moving on their own, and animals doing things they never would. These are the types of things one should expect. At night, Pedro tells Jimmy that Jair won't sleep. The boy won't even leave the car. Pedro goes into the vehicle, telling his son nothing bad will happen to him. He finds a drawing of the 5 of them near the sun. The next scene has everyone sleeping except for Jair. We see someone approaching the car until this person puts their bloody hand on the window. There is a woman inside the house, holding Santino. Pedro's mother awakens and asks the woman if she is Sabrina. The woman replies she arrived for her children, for they need her. Soon Jimmy heads over to Pedro to awaken him. He says something is going on inside. When they get in there, Pedro's mom worriedly tells him she doesn't know what she saw. She thought it was Sabrina, but it wasn't. Entering the room, Pedro sees a bloody Sabrina there, holding their son. She says she is taking their children to a place where no one can harm them, so she jumps out of the window with Santino in her arms. Pedro instantly rushes outside to search for his son. Not finding him, he runs to Jair and sees blood on the car. Since it is locked, he is forced to break the window, asking his son if he is okay. He demands to know from Jimmy where the blood came from, yet Jimmy does not know. Pedro continues to search for his younger son. Mirtha draws near the car and wants Jimmy to look at his nephew. She says a demon got into the boy's head, where it is trapped. Jimmy sees how irregular Jair's hands are. Mirtha says she saw this happen to autistic people. A demon enters their body, but can't figure out their mind. The demon can stay lost in limbo for a long time. Inside the house, Mirtha says the 7th rule is that one cannot be afraid of perishing. She believes Sabrina would not be there if Pedro wasn't scared she would take his kids. She tells Pedro he can't get his son, and should understand why. His fear of losing the boy helps the demon. Evil knows more about a person's fears than the person does. Jimmy volunteers to find Santino. Mirtha says the rotten must be found. They must destroy the man to stop the beast from being born. Jimmy thinks the rotten is deceased, or else this would not be happening. Showcasing her knowledge, Mirtha says this situation is called the birth process. For now, the demon just freed its essence. Jimmy tells her where they moved the man. This information shocks her. For moving a rotten while knowing he was possessed, she calls the brothers idiots. Outside, Mirtha says the town lights are off. She knows it's dangerous to go back without using lights. Later, we see the brothers riding in separate vehicles. Mirtha rides with Pedro, telling him her husband was a shepherd and they had a church. Alas, they were frauds. The first possessed person appeared in their church. He vomited a family he had eaten on the previous night. She says God is over. When cobras appeared, the monks taught them a way to eliminate the cobras before they were born. That is what they did for 12 years. They took responsibility for the damage they inflicted on faith. Mirtha does not consider it surprising the cleaner was destroyed. As she says this, we observe her with a cleaner device. She says one night, her husband did not return from a cleaning. Due to that, she left town. The woman wonders, what if the demon infected the town simply for her? In the process of driving, Jimmy sees someone walking on the road ahead. He drives by to see it is Sabrina doing something very disturbing. It makes Jimmy stop to look at her in fear. He allows her to pass prior to driving into her and slamming into a tree. The possessed Sabrina is still alive, looking at him. She tells Jimmy he told her he loved her. Shifting to Mirtha's house, Jair tells his grandmother he is hungry. He talks normally, which is very unusual for him. The woman holds her crucifix necklace in fear. Afterward, Pedro and Mirtha arrive at a school. Mirtha told him earlier that evil is drawn to children. First, they look through the windows. Strangely, Pedro finds children sitting at their desks despite it being night. Soon he finds a door that opens for the duo to enter the school. They walk cautiously in there until they walk into the room where the kids eerily sit for no apparent reason. Mirtha whispers to one of the girls, asking if it is there. The girl shakes her head. Mirtha asks if the girl could tell her where it is, but the girl shakes her head again. Another girl has blood exiting her mouth. She smears something on it that looks like ash. Mirtha has to leave the school out of feeling sick. She tells Pedro the kids won't help them, and she doesn't think she can deal with this. Soon they see a boy coming their way. Mirtha says the kids protect the rotten. Pedro runs to the boy, asking him if he knows about a hurt man nearby. Ignoring him, the boy runs into the school. Pedro says he will go inside to force the boy to talk. Mirtha replies it's not a good idea. She adds their lives are at stake. Seconds later, the boy returns to ask Pedro if he's looking for Uriel. Since Pedro says they are, the boy says he is at a certain teacher's house. He tells Pedro where the house is, and the man gets into his truck. Mirtha tells him it might not be like what the boy said. She thinks someone might be waiting for them there. In a short time, the girl Mirtha whispered to knocks on Pedro's window. Crying, she says it's a lie. They should not listen to the boy. She says Uriel is at her house because her dad wanted to cure the sick man. Realizing he's being lied to by the kids, he demands that they stop telling him lies. At this point, Mirtha deduces that Uriel is at the school. If they get sent elsewhere, it means Uriel is at this location. Thus, they re-enter the school. Pedro finds a hammer in the stage room that he uses to undo a plank on the floor. A lifeless man is revealed, prompting Mirtha to say the adults are deceased. Pedro asks if the kids did this, and the duo now sees them standing nearby. They aren't kids anymore, says Mirtha. She wants Pedro to get her cleaner device from the truck, so he goes to collect it. While he is out there, the girl he struck yells for Mirtha to leave, or it will take their lives. Once Pedro returns, the girl tells him the other kids are bad. Mirtha starts to set up her device and Pedro removes more planks from the stage floor. He finds more deceased people hidden there. Dragging out a woman, he sees Uriel. The rotten awakens, telling the duo to take his life. Pedro tries to pull him out, but of course, Uriel is too heavy. He tells Pedro this is all his fault. The girl does not give up on trying to get them to listen to her. She ends up convincing Pedro to enter a room where she claims an axe resides. Mirtha yells it's a trap and he should not leave her alone with the children. The man should have listened to her, for there is no axe in the room. He tries to exit the room, yet one of the kids restrained the door from the other side. He watches them drag a severely injured Mirtha away. One of the girls takes her life with a hammer. Pedro uses a chair to break the glass, allowing him to escape the room. He sees Uriel peeking out from the floor, making Pedro use the cleaner device in the wrong way. He slams Uriel's head with it multiple times until the rotten finally loses his life. Soon the kids come back and Pedro sees them looking at him. When a bloody child exits Uriel's corpse, the kids smile. The child puts some of his blood on Pedro's forehead before he walks away. He leaves the school and the children follow him. We watch him walk toward the rising sun. In the next scene, Pedro returns home. Jimmy is there to hug him. Soon we see Jair is given ice cream to eat. In the meantime, Pedro showers. Once he is done, the blood marks on his forehead are oddly still present. We get the feeling nothing is going to remove them. Subsequently, Jimmy approaches the boy who is still in the saddle room. He admits a voice in his head told him to take the cleaner's life. Jimmy wants to know what happened to the boy's mother, and the boy says it's the same thing that happened to Jimmy's mother. Switching to Pedro, he sees Jair choking on a spoon stuck in his mouth. This causes Pedro to check his son's mouth, finding blood in there. He also pulls out hair, but the worst thing is that his mom's necklace falls out of Jair's mouth. Due to this, Pedro exits the house and falls to his knees. The man screams in agony, having lost everything.